You're the sunshine on my mind. We're burning through the city lights. You're the sunshine on my mind.
I've got 2 sheets of 17mm ply. I'll be using this for my lids. So now I just have to plan out the cuts to make sure I'm getting the most out of the sheets I've bought and can have an off cut for some other job later. Got my 3 biggest pieces marked out, so now we can go ahead and cut these. For the first time since getting them, I've done the inevitable and cut straight down the middle of my trestle tables. Honestly, I'm just amazed that that hasn't already happened before now. There we are. That is all starting to come together quite nicely. I've got the bits of my platform cut out now, so we just have to start working on those hinges to make them actually lift up. I also just need to finish off a few little support beams in the middle, just structurally where I want things to be a bit stronger. But overall, we're starting to get a bit of a look at how things are going to be when they're all finished up. Got my table here, still going to buy that pole to make that sit up properly, but it's coming together. So my next thing is just to add a few little supports around the inside of the bed frame, which I can use to then section out certain areas. Like where the heater is, we're going to completely block that off from the inside, so all this area can be storage. I need an upright here because that's looking a bit weak, and a few little pieces so we can block out from here to there. And I also need to look at closing out my battery section. So I've been looking at how I'm going to install the hinges for the actual lids, and what I've come up with is I'm basically just going to put some little blocks in and sit them just below the height of everything else, so the hinges can sit directly on top. I can offset them a little bit further forward, and then that should fold up nice and clean. The biggest issue is just setting them far enough forward so when they lift up, the back isn't going to pinch against the wall here. We're running with that and we'll see how we go. Those hinges have now been installed. However, based on where I've had to place them so this lifts up all the way, I am gonna have to take a little bit more out of this lip just so that it finishes flush with the end of the box. So we're gonna cut these down, then we can go ahead and install our lids properly. Now it's time to sand down the back lids and install the hinges on there. All those lids now done. However, before I can fully install them, I do need to buy a chisel just to lower that gap. But that means it's finally time to go ahead to box out the insides with a little bit of sheeting. So I'll go get all my measurements for that and then we'll start cutting out. To do this, we're just using a little bit of, I think, 7mm MDF. Should come together looking pretty tidy. To install this floor, I was originally going to be using some bullet head nails. However, thinking about it a bit more, if I ever want to get it up, once those bullet head nails go in, it's going to be very difficult to do that without causing some serious damage. So I think instead, we're just going to use some regular screws. Probably only need like 4 or 5 on either side to stop it sliding because it is built in there pretty tight. But at least if I want to change anything later on or the table needs to be fixed, it'll be easy just to remove the screws and slide it out. Right now I'm just chucking some support beams above my false floor just to give us something to fix into when we box it out. We've got our first few pieces cut, and now to fix this to the side of the bed, we're just going to be using some little brad nails that are going to be spaced evenly throughout the piece. So just rethinking this, I think it's going to be a lot stronger and look a lot neater if we use liquid nails on the back of it and just do brads in all the corners. And there's going to be less holes in it. When we go to paint it, it'll look a bit smoother. It'll also be a lot stronger. So I'm going to see if I have any liquid nails left, and we'll hopefully run with that. All right, let's do it. I've now measured up for these last 2 pieces, so let's go cut them out. These final pieces are ready to go, so I'm going to chuck some liquid nails on all the wooden bits that are going to be touching, and then we can put them in with the brad nails. We now have all that framework boxed in, and honestly man, that looks fantastic. The hinges are up on the lids, so you're getting the first real look at how this bed's going to come together. And just so you can get a feel for the dimensions of it all. Perfect. So this is roughly how the couch is going to look when they're all finished. How we doing? So moving into the future now, the van build is done, which means I can show you the finished bed and storage and give you a good idea of the finished product. This right here is my finished couch slash bed and the mattress covers that I sewed up to sit and sleep on. Underneath it, you can see the bed frame that we've just boxed up, the supports for the table which pop down when it's in bed mode, as well as some outlets that I've installed into the bed frame. Let me quickly show you the storage access on the back side as well. This right here is the finished cupboard storage that we have on the outside of the van. All of them are just connected up with little magnetic latches. They look super nice. And I can also access everything I need in these storage compartments from the outside of my van. And now for the main feature of this setup, let me show you how this couch turns into a table and also a queen size bed. So you may notice down below the cushions, I've got this little black box, and that is actually the mounting bracket for my awesome swivel table. So this right here has a channel built in, which slides into the first pole to give us our height. You tighten the pole with these little levers here. Stable as. And then for the swivel mechanism, there's a second housing up top, which pops neatly onto the first pole. And then we've got full range of motion in that table. Now let me grab my tabletop, which doubles as my main support for my bed. Right here behind my wall divider, I've built this neat little storage flap that houses my table, bed extension, as well as some outdoor camping essentials. Now, unfortunately, timber swells with the change of climate, and I built this thing tight. So with the weather right now, I have to open it from the back just so we don't damage it. My little flap opens up just like this, and now I can grab my table out. And this right here is my little bed extension. Now underneath my table, you can see a few bits of hardware we've mounted. This here is a bracket that slides directly onto my swivel arm, and the metal bars are simply reinforcement for when it's in bed mode. So my table here pops onto the swivel arm like so. And there we go. We now have a sturdy little table with a really impressive range of motion. So on that swivel arm, my table can swivel right out the way to have easy access to the space, and then slide right back in to be a nice functional desk or somewhere to eat your dinner. It also swivels right out the way over here. It is the most functional table design you could want. It's awesome. Just check that out, man. This table is amazing. Now, obviously, when you're actually using it, you're gonna want something that's a little bit more sturdy than that, and that's easy to achieve. In the same way we put that straight arm up, you just tighten these levers here, and that keeps it locked in place and ready to be more functional. With that out of the way, we now drop our table onto these support ledges, like so. Don't look at my butt either, you pervs. It's a van build, not only fence. There we go. It's a really sturdy base for my bed. That's those little brackets underneath. And then to make it an appropriate length for someone my size, we also throw on that bed extension, like so. At this point, the backrest of the couch becomes the middle of my bed. And we now have a really comfy bed setup that sleeps too. Oh. Now, obviously, I'm quite tall, 6'3", if anyone wondering. So van life isn't typically conducive with that. However, this bed has comfortably slept me and my girlfriend on multiple occasions. You just have to get a little bit creative with the layout. I typically hug this corner over here on a bit of a diagonal, and then she'll sleep straight down the middle, like so. Yeah, this bed is dope. I sleep just as good in this van as I do in my bed at home. If you found this video useful or entertaining, please drop a like and let me know in the comments. If you have any questions about my setup, this phase of the build, or just van builds in general, let me know in the comments. We can chat about that down there as well. That is the end of my little 3-part series on how I created this couch slash bed slash table slash storage. This is definitely one of my favorite parts of the van build. I took a little bit of inspiration from some of the different designs I saw online. However, this is the design I came up with and figured out a few functional ways to make it work in my space, such as the mounting beams bolted straight into the van's body, which I could then fix my boxes into, the little lip that runs around the inside for my table to drop onto, and my bed extension, and also how to fit this functionally into the space around my cabinetry design. Subscribe to see the rest of my van build unfold, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.